Okay, I think I'm connected. Good evening, everyone. We'll get right into it. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Okay, so I've decided for the next few weeks I'm going to talk about the various realms of existence, from the hell realms, Naraya, through the Brahma and formless realms. So this evening, I'm just going to provide a bit of an overview to get us categorize Sara as differentiated by the levels of beings. One you may have seen is a list of 31 stations of being. There's also five jati, or five types of birth. That is hell, ghosts, humans, animals, and devas. In the Mahayana, they had a six. They include asuras as the sixth realm. Now, all of gray areas about where we draw the lines and what classifies as what. And there are numerous kinds of beings that don't fit into any of these schemes very well, such as yakas is probably the most prominent. So all these ways of categorizing beings are somewhat arbitrary. And when you get into the details, there's a lot of things that slip through the cracks. Is levels, because these correspond of consciousness. The first one is the kama bhumi, or the plane of sense desire or sense experience, is probably a better interpretation, because it's not just sense desire, but the beings are dependent on the five physical senses. And this is the broadest category, and it includes hell beings, ghosts, animals, humans, and the sensual devas. This is an extremely broad, primarily the dependence on the senses. People are saying that the stream is glitching. No, I can't do anything to adjust the level of the stream. I'm trying to get going with the OBS, but I'm having difficulties getting that to work properly. So I'm still just using the YouTube interface, and it doesn't have any controls like that. There's no way to do anything about that. Okay, we're talking about the as long as we're not losing the audio, I think we'll just stick with it. I'll try and get stuck with this. So the kama bhumi is the realm of sense experience. The beings in this on these levels, they one of the characteristics is that they're pretty much universally, we can find some exceptions, but pretty much universally they are divided into two genders. This is a feature of this level only. And they also take food in the form of uh, of, of various this, and also the most uh, most variable. There's the widest range within that level. Then we have the Rupa Bhumi, or the plane of form, and it's called that to distinguish it from the Arupa Bhumi, the third level. So there's the level of form and the level of the formless. The level of form are beings who have transcended sensuality. They no longer have and they don't set of beings in this level are the Brahmas, who are well beyond the level of the Devas. The Devas have more in common with us than they do with the Brahmas. The Brahmas are in a different plane of existence. And they're divided into levels as well, which correspond to the four jhanas in the human realm. This is one of the ways of categorizing consciousness in the Abhidhamma, is into these four bhumis, and they correspond to both existence and attainment. So there are Brahmas that first, second, and so on. Rupa bhumas, these are also called four aggregate beings, because they do not have the aggregate of form, of physicality, of materiality. They are mind only. So this is quite different than anything else, and very difficult for us to conceptualize. And then Nibbana is categorized as the fourth bhumi. Okay, so that I find that to be the most useful way of mapping or categorizing the different levels of beings. Of being into down uh, in the realms of existence. This is why samsara is considered so terrible, because you can achieve a very pleasant existence as a deva or a brahma and then lose it and be reborn in the lower realms. That's why a wheel is often a symbol of samsara, because beings are going up and going down, cycling around. So I'm getting a lot of messages that the stream is not very good this week. We had a really good one last week. That's not. It's I'm just reading the notices in the chat. Okay, so let's kind of cut it short then, because this is choppy, and I think that's probably sufficient for a general introduction. Next week, I want to talk about I want to start at the bottom and work our way up. I'll deal with There's still some communication possible here. I'll see if there's anything I can deal with in the chat. Most of it seems to be mostly about the crappiness of the connection. Okay, let's see. Now we're getting somewhere. Let's see the questions. Is it theoretically possible to be continuously reborn as a Dewa? With the right common determination, it seems that rebirth can be reliably directed according to the suttas. The main issue lies in the recollection of the knowledge and sustainable rebirth. Is it even actually stories in the commentaries that talk about beings who are reborn many times as a Dewa successively? Uh, the problem with um, with that, why it probably isn't common, is that the very pleasant situation of Dewas being immersed in sensuality to such a degree, a the Dewas become heedless. The usual for them to in Sawatingsa Dewa, visited by Moggallana, after the Buddha had given some teaching to Saka, and then Moggallana goes up to see him and I'll see how he's getting on with his teachings. And he finds him in the lap of luxury surrounded by dancing girls. And when he asks him, how are you getting on? Are you practicing those teachings the Buddha gave you? He says, well, I'm a busy man. I'll get around to it. So this is, I think, common with Dewas. They become heedless. So then they use up all their good karma. They don't make any fresh karma or develop spiritually, and they end up getting they're in rebirth. And seems closely affiliated either as family or as friends in one lifetime. They end up mingling their karma. They make karma together, and there's a strong impetus to be reborn in the same circles, often taking different roles, not repeating the same family pattern, but being born in the same circle of people. How to be reborn as a Brahma? The principal prerequisite for becoming born as a Brahma is to have development of jhana. Another question. Can I be reborn as a Deva or Brahma even if in the past I was too virtuous and acted on wrong views? I think maybe there's a typo there. Maybe you meant not too virtuous. That's really indeterminate, because if you've made a mix of good and bad karma, you don't really know which one is going to come to the end and cause a particular rebirth. How do we avoid the only stream entry? One of the characteristics of being a stream winner is that it's not possible to be reborn in a lower realm ever again. We have some passages in the suttas where someone attains stream entry and they say the gates of hell are shut for me. But failing that, there's no guarantee. But if one lives according to the precepts, that's a pretty good protection from a lower rebirth. When we talk about Devas or Brahma realms, are we talking about different galaxies or planets or another dimension or plane? I don't think we can really map it in that way. Maybe the closest thing we could say is a different dimension or plane. There's an uh, interesting idea presented by the Zen master Dogen, who in his Rivers and Mountains Sutra, he says that the difference between the different planes of existence is entirely a function of sanya, of perception. He says if there's a river, a human being sees it as clear, clean water. A hell being sees it as molten lava. A naga sees it as crystal palaces, and so on. So that would another way of maybe a more modern way of exclude into different exist. I wonder why they choose those known to the general public here on Earth. It would certainly help to encourage faith in the Buddha. Well, for one thing, the general opinion that Dewas have of humans, from what we can gather, most Dewas have a low opinion of humans. They think we're nasty, smelly things, and they don't really want to have anything to do with us. There are some Dewas who develop some spiritual wisdom, and there are stories in the suttas of Dewas helping out beings on the earth, but it seems to be unusual. Um, not making themselves. They may be nudging things here and there to move things along in a better direction. Sometimes I feel like there is a crossover between realms, and sometimes a being may experience different realm experiences in one lifespan. Would you agree with that? Yeah, there is an aspect of that, particularly here in the human realm, because we're sort of, you might say, in the middle, and it's possible for us to touch on experiences that if they're not identical with, but have a strong correspondence to or an equivalency with the different in jhana, for example, Brahma realm. Is what it's. Likewise, there's some on the lower end. There's some human beings who live an animal-like existence, and some are so miserable they're in a ghostly or hellish existence. And some live in very pleasant, sensual existence, and you could say they're living in a Dewa-like way. What category of beings do extraterrestrials fall under Buddhist cosmology? Um, I don't think we can know that for certain where they are in the levels. I would think probably they're equivalent to humans, kind of equivalent plane as humans, but there may. Okay. Okay, I think maybe we'll end it here today, and next week we'll try again.